I live again.
Blood. Blood.
Blood and bits of sick.
Monolith's 1997 thrilling, gory, painful FPS classic is packed to the brim with grisly ghouls, haunting tunes, and more pop cultural references than a Family Guy cutaway. It's sick, it's twisted, it's darkly hilarious, and I absolutely love it. Now, the monsters are brilliant, nasty little so-and-sos that are guaranteed to make you go, ooh, ooh. Blowing them up will instantly trigger a flood of dopamine in your brain, making blood a perfectly safe, perfectly legal way of getting one hell of a buzz. Although, you might start to get a bit paranoid around statues. Monsters, tick. Done. We've already stuck our noses into that trough. But the many and varied ways of taking said beasties down, now that's what we're doing here today. Blood's weapons are what all weapons should be. Powerful. No extended 20-round 2-minute shotgun battles are no weapons that dominate the game. You can kill with pretty much any weapon, and every weapon has its use. Pitchfork, flare gun, sawed-off shotty, Tommy gun, napalm launcher, dynamite, aerosol can, Tesla cannon, life leech, and voodoo doll. They all rock in one way or another, and only one of them leaves me with a nagging sense of disappointment. Can you guess which one? Now, I'm going to run through each weapon, detailing its functions and best applications. Then I'll spend some time appreciating the overall design and drawing some comparisons to the Blood Alpha. Yeah, there are stats out there to be found by those who care for them. Personally, that's not me. I appreciate stats, and I appreciate that some people crave them, and I acknowledge that I've put them into videos in the past, but that's not a focus for me now. You can find out that info for yourself if you wish to dig. I'm here to gush over sprites, sounds, and the little eccentricities found in old games, laying out my own understanding of stuff, questionable as it may be. As always, I love to hear your impressions, what little stories you've cooked up concerning weapon origins and purposes. Please feel free to lay a hot dollop in the comments below. Now, grab a seat on the JoJo bleachers, chow down on a freshly extracted life essence, and let's dive in. Straight out of the gate, Blood breaks with the FPS tradition set down by Doom and Duke 3D and eschews a starting pistol weapon. Caleb rises from his tomb, rusty pitchfork in hand, to exact his revenge upon Chernobyl and his hideous followers. When I first played Blood, I was confused. What? No pistol. How am I supposed to take bad guys out from afar? The number 3 answer to that is that the flare gun's in the next area. The number 2 answer is there's secret TNT in the starting room. And the number 1 answer is you've got a bloody great pitchfork. Go use it. You're not faced with hit scanners until you get a ranged weapon yourself, so only having a poke and pole and zombies to face is a nice combat lesson served up to you by the developers. Through trial and error, you'll work out the optimal distance to jab zombies from. In short, you'll learn the steps of the dance. The dance is a groovy little 2-step you'll soon fall into when going hammer and tongs with the pitchfork. Get your hits in, dart back, leap over monsters, and then repeat. Leaping is paramount, and is one of your greatest assets, especially when engaging in the classic pastime of zombie herding. Shepherding these mindless cretins is great fun, and when done effectively, it helps to maximize the power of your explosive weapons. More on this later. It takes about 6 jabs to take down a zombie. When killed in this manner, they won't rise back up, making it really quite effective against these brutes. In fact, the pitchfork is a handy, ammo-free tool to use on various creepy, crawly nuisance enemies like spiders, rats, hellhands, and bone eels. Drop to the floor and slip into the dance. Stab, slide back before they attack, and stab again. Considering that the pitchfork doesn't get buffed by any pickups in-game like Doom's Berserk, and that it's the only weapon that doesn't have an alternative fire mode, if you're conscious of your surroundings and the enemy types you're facing, it can remain a very powerful weapon right through the game. It just calls for a little patience. Looking at the sprites, we can see that it's a fairly typical old-fashioned 4-tined farming fork used for pitching, or throwing, hay around. Hay is of course replaced by the bodies of our enemies, but the principle remains the same. It would have been cool if there was an alt fire where the fork gets plunged into a monster, doing constant heavy damage but sticking you to them, leaving you exposed like Doom's chainsaw. I can imagine the sprites seesawing this way and that as Caleb levers open the wound, gore pouring out. It's unfortunate that the Guns Akimbo power-up does nothing to the Pitchfork, as it would be sweet to be rocking two of these babies at the same time, doubling your stabbing potential. Well, in the Blood Alpha, the Pitchfork seems to act as you'd expect, except it does have an alt fire whereby it shoots out a constant stream of explosive fireballs. I don't think this would have been a serious consideration for the weapon in the full game, and it seems much more likely that this was applied to the Pitchfork as it's the automatic starting weapon, and the developers could immediately use this function to test wall cracks and other game aspects involving explosions. This little beauty is another breakaway from the FPS standard of the time. It's not a pistol, and it's not weak. No, instead of bullets, the flare gun poofs out burning projectiles which lodge in the bodies of enemies. It's really cool. These shots appear to deal a constant nibble of damage, draining the target's health until they reach a burning death state, whereby their normal death sprites are swapped for some truly gnarly burny ones. A moment of appreciation. That's nice. The flare shots stick around in a bad guy for about 6 seconds before they disappear. If the target dies within this time, grab out your marshmallows. If not, apply more flares. If you really want to speed things up, slap a couple of flares into your target and then follow up with a judicious poking from the Pitchfork to nudge them towards death. I found this to be a particularly handy method of dealing with zombies if you're in a rush. Pew pew. Poke poke. The primary attack spits out one flare at a time. The secondary attack, though, spews out a flaming diamond, consuming 8 flares, which is insanely good at lighting up a cluster of cultists or zombies. Popping out from a corner and sending out a wave of burning death to an unsuspecting group is so damn juicy. If you're looking to clear an area and don't have any gas for the Napalm Launcher, or if it's early game and you didn't grab the one in the first level super secret, using the flare gun's alt fire is a must. Do bear in mind, though, that if a flared up monster stumbles into water, the projectile will be extinguished. The posse of fanatic douchebags at the start of Dark Carnival always get one over on me, and then I have to face them in the water. Not good. I love the devilish whip crack sound it makes when it fires. It really helps to give the impression that these burning flares carry quite an impact. Meaty, snappy, I could listen to it all day. There are so many great opportunities in the game to go hog wild, blasting into a room and filling it with fire, screams, and gore. But the hit-and-run style of the flare gun's attack is an important part of Blood's overall gameplay loop. Painful death is waiting for you around just about any corner, so approaching situations intelligently is paramount. If you want to live, that is. The sprites are pretty damn tasty. A worn wooden-handled flare pistol that looks like it survived a few shipwrecks in its time. The team originally bought a modern marine flare gun when working out its design, but this proved quite the disappointment. It was small, orange, and ugly. It was far too modern and didn't sit well with the Tommy and the Shotty, so they cast their eyes backwards and checked out an antique brass army flare gun, which ticked all the boxes. In the Blood Alpha, the weapon looks and acts pretty much as you'd expect. Instead of number 2, it sits in the number 6 slot, where our TNT will eventually take up residence. It ordinarily spits out single flares, fair enough, but the alt fire doesn't make its targets burn up. Rather, they just explode. The alt fire also only consumes one flare, which is pretty insane. Also, when enemies catch fire, they'll stay in their flailing loop seemingly forever instead of collapsing to the floor. I always use the flare gun right up to the end of the game, as I never see it outlive its usefulness, even as my arsenal of ridiculous weapons grows ever larger. This is evidence of the impressive balancing in this game. Okay, we're in much more familiar FPS territory here, a double-barreled shotgun. And I've got to say, this one is a thing of beauty. Its damage, heavy. It sounds epic. The boom boom, followed by the hollow rattle of spent shells, is music to my ears. Its sprites, gorgeous. And its reload speed leaves all the other shotties in the dust. Caleb's speed really emphasizes that this dude is a deadly gunslinger, powered by an undead, hideous strength. The regular attack will fire out a single barrel, alternating between each of them before the weapon gets reloaded. This little detail is so important. This is not just a devastating metal tube for chucking out hit-scan pellets, it's an actual weapon with mechanics that function realistically. And sure, it's not so realistic when doubled with guns akimbo, but I suppose that's some sort of dark magic anyway, so it's neither here nor there. This primary attack is good if you want to slap around some nuisance enemies and don't want to expend 2 shells where only 1 will do, or if you want to trigger some dynamite you've laid down. The single shot also appears to have a much tighter spread, making it more valuable for pinpointing targets at a distance. However, the secondary attack is where it's at, and I pretty much solo it, especially once I've got the flare gun or Tommy gun to shoulder the burden of sniping. The alt fire shoots off both barrels at once, which is so devastating that if you angle your shots from the ground up, you can send a zombie into the stratosphere with 1 blast. Comparing the spread of pellets, yeah, you can see that the alt fire really coughs up a wide spray. But as I essentially consider this a melee attack, it matters not. Keep in mind that if only 1 barrel is loaded, you've already expended 1 using the primary fire in other words, the secondary fire will just shoot out 1 singular shot. With both barrels primed though, the world is your mollusk. This weapon is exceptionally good against any enemy in my experience, but I found it to be especially useful against zombies, gargoyles, and cultists. With the first 2, hoe into them with the alt fire. The zombies will fly and goyles can be stunned with constant close quarters shots. With cultists, either sneak up on them and unleash both barrels or constantly send out primary shots if they're in the mid-distance. This will keep them flinching and it can reduce the likelihood of them retaliating before they fall down. In the alpha, the Shotty is very close to the finished product. It's got 2 distinct attacks with different firing sounds. Although monsters seem much weaker, so you don't get a fully illustrated picture as to the weapon's power beyond it being a deadly boomstick. I really like the different sprites though. The barrel's much darker and it stands out better against the environment. And so I think I actually prefer it to the full game version. I also like being able to see Caleb holding the weapon. It gives a better sense of scale and perspective than the finished sprites, but I can understand why they cut the hands off, so to speak. The alpha Shotty is holidaying in weapon slot number 4, which keeps throwing me off. Muscle memory has me constantly reaching for 3, but that's the dynamite. Gah. Basic repeating weapon time.
A Tommy gun!
The Tommy. Fast firing, accurate, and in the right hands, it's quite the deadly little toy. When I say fast firing, I do mean it. If you hold down the primary fire, it'll spew out hot lead like there's no tomorrow. Its spent casings streaming out to cover the deck like something from Hot Shots 2. As you'd expect, it uses bullets for ammo found in small piles or in drum magazines. If you're lucky, a fanatic might drop the Tommy in the 2nd level, but they seem much more likely to give you some bullets than the gun itself. I used to sleep on the Tommy's alt fire, but I've since found it super useful, especially when powered up with guns akimbo. It's great, and I do mean great, for making a hole when you're being mobbed by rotting doofuses and cult boys. A single alt fire attack uses 14 bullets, the shots of which are spread in a line. Although the sprites give the impression the gun is firing really wildly, the attack itself is still quite concentrated, unless you're miles away from your target. The Tommy gives you exactly what you'd expect from a rat-tat-tat pew-pew machine, and it's always worth remembering that you can tap the fire button to administer singular shots to snipe baddies and freeze them in pain. The zombies will go down effectively to this weapon's unstoppable firepower. Once they're on the floor, they'll stay there, unlike unfocused hits from the Shotty. I've found the Tommy to be effective against most enemies. Its usefulness is only held back by how much ammo it consumes and therefore how many bullets you got stuffed in your pockets at any one time. It's swell for sniping nuisance enemies as well as popping barrels and trap dynamite. I really love its sprites and how they jiggle up and down when firing, giving the impression that Caleb is barely maintaining his grip on the gun when it goes off. The drum magazine really helps to give extra character as well. In the alpha, the Tommy is much as you'd expect, except it occupies slot 5, has a different firing sound, and the alt fire is kinda balked. Besides that though, it's pretty good. Living in weapons slot 5, the Napalm Launcher is the dankest, baddest, non-rocket firing rocket launcher I've yet experienced. A lot of its power and badassery comes from how its projectile explosion exemplifies the game's floaty, fierce, flammable physics. The primary attack will poop out a fireball. When it slams into a target, it erupts in an orgy of flaming violence. 3 amazing things happen. 1. There's a tasty explosion that rocks the screen. 2. Targets get physically thrown around, as do their jibs. This theatrical display of splash damage is referred to as concussive damage. At the heart of any explosion in the game, a powerful concussion will be released, ripping monsters apart and tossing their insides around like confetti. This is one of Blood's greatest assets. For me, this over-the-top cartoony violence and physicality is one of the biggest things that sets it above other 90s FPSs. And 3. If a target is within range and takes a good gulp of the explosion's additional fire damage, they'll burst into flames as if they've been instantly whacked with a flare. It's a thing of abject beauty. You hate the enemies, they hate you. You have a fireball cannon. Your brain goes, ooh, nice, as blood, guts, flames, and screams flow around you like a sweet summer breeze. An alt fire was added in the Plasma Pack expansion, which allows the Napalm Launcher to spit a giant fireball upwards, kinda like a mortar. It'll then explode and spawn a cluster of smaller explosive balls, which will in turn spawn yet more flamey death. It's incredibly OP, incredibly dangerous to use, incredibly expensive to use, 12 gas ammo, and of course incredibly sexy. If you know where a cultist or zombie nest is gonna be and you have the juice, I think you're legally obliged to use it. Keep in mind that certain monsters aren't the best for napalming. Phantasms aren't worth it as they phase in and out of reality, and mother spiders will be flung all over the place due to the concussive blast and how light their mass is. You've got a big room of baddies and guns akimbo though, and you may have trouble removing the grin from your face. I love the sculpted rusty metal of the gun's body, with its undulating orange lights hinting at the barely contained power of the gasoline under pressure. I can picture Caleb emerging slowly from a dark, dripping sewer, his spurs clinking as he walks, his face lit from below by the evil throbbing glow of this weapon, making cultists pause halfway through an infirmux to audibly gulp. The wild and woolly nature of the projectile's graphics are simply beautiful. It's a chunk of burning hellfire promising to stick to all it touches, rending flesh down to the bone. In the Blood Alpha, the weapon acts completely differently, and damn it, as much as I wouldn't replace the playfulness of the napalm, I really love the concept here. Sitting in slot 9, the gun is attached to Caleb via a wire or surgical tube, using his life force as ammunition. It shoots out ghostly faces that top up your health when they kill an enemy. Pretty bloody cool. Considering it seems to one-hit most monsters, you'll always be around full health if you move appropriately. This is essentially what the Life Leech would have done, so I'm guessing they swiped it from here, plopped it there, and then later changed the Life Leech to no longer vampirically drain monster HP because it was too OP. Fair enough too, I guess. The Ectoplasmic Blaster gives off a light grey flash when fired. Ecto-Blaster, what an idea! Taking the Wraith Verge into the 20th century. Love it. Yes. Blood's most iconic weapon, in my opinion, the Dynamite Bundle. Sitting in slot number 6, this handful of hectic harm has a few different uses as well as having 2 extra variants, also occupying slot 6, remote detonators and proximity detonators. Dynamite's primary fire will make Caleb lob a stack of death sticks which explode on impact. Once lit, if you don't get rid of the TNT, it'll go off in about 4 seconds, parting your hands from the rest of your body. The longer you hold down the fire button, the further he'll throw the bundle. A red meter pops up at the bottom of the screen to show the strength of his throw. I love this handy meter. I feel it's a major step up from the pipe bombs in Duke 3D. Don't get me wrong, I love Duke's rattling demolition tubes, but the various ways you can use dynamite in Blood is unsurpassed. If you tap the alt fire, Caleb will light the TNT and hold onto it, turning it into a time bomb. You can then use the primary fire to throw it, where it won't explode on contact, instead going off after a few seconds. This is so good for clearing out unexplored areas by bouncing it off walls. It pays to be extra paranoid in Blood. Chernobog's twisted forces are waiting around every corner, and that is no exaggeration. If you tap alt fire a second time, it will be dropped at your feet. Good if you're being pursued and want to leave a trail of deadly breadcrumbs. Dynamite's great for popping monsters, but also for destroying walls marked with cracks, which often lead to secrets or shortcuts, letting you get the jump on the bad guys. Now, throwing dynamite. This is something that needs to be learned personally. No amount of blah blah from me will make you better at tossing these deadly bundles around the game. With practice, you'll feel in your bones whether a throw will reach your target, and when paired with precise aiming, can lead to some truly amazing trick shots. I will throw a tip in, however. If you bounce TNT off the ceiling with the primary fire, it won't explode on contact, and it'll move at light speed, sending it a lot further than a normal throw will allow. God bless this game's twisted physics. Also, if you hold down the fire button like you're gonna throw the TNT for miles, but then tilt down when letting go, it'll give you a really accurate fast bundle. Great for taking out gargoyles, as they can zoom around annoyingly. Big thanks to Kenny is Alive for reminding me of this tip. I was vaguely aware of it, but hadn't really put it into much practice. Also, never pass up the opportunity to herd a throbbing horde of zombies by leaping over their heads multiple times until they bunch up, then letting loose a juicy dynamite bundle right at the heart of the crowd, resulting in an explosion that will make you bite your lip and curl your toes. Yum yum. Concussive damage for the win. And finally, dynamite won't raise if you're in water, as Caleb's lighter will get all soggy, but remotes and proxes can still be used. The sprites are so clean and classic that my mind just goes absolutely blank when I sit down to try and say something clever about them. So all I can say is, they absolutely rock. This Dynamite Bundle comes equipped with a motion sensor. When planted with the primary fire, it'll sit on the ground and give a sharp beep to tell you it's armed. This takes about a second, so don't expect it to go off instantly unless you drop it and shoot it. The primary fire can also be held down like a regular Dynamite Bundle, so you can chuck them around, although this one thankfully won't explode if you hold onto it too long. If you've got a good lead on a pursuer, using the alt fire is great as the bomb will be dropped at your feet. So, much like the regular bundle, you can leave a trail of death for anyone foolish enough to chase ya. This weapon's great for engineering traps, but it's not just you who'll be laying them down. The bad guys also have a nasty habit of leaving proximity detonators lying around, hoping to catch you unawares. A bloody cheeky example of this is in the Great Temple, where a double trap threatens to turn you into chunky salsa. Nasty. Also, be mindful of where you've been leaving your prox bombs, because it's not just enemies who'll get blown up. This final Dynamite variant gives you the greatest level of control over your celebrations of conflagration. Primary fire lets you piff the dynamite as you've come to expect, and likewise, secondary fire makes you drop the stack at your feet. Once you've dropped your bundle, hitting primary fire again will make Caleb boop the trigger, blowing everything to hell. If you keep hitting alt fire, you'll keep dropping more and more stacks. They'll only be set off once you hit primary fire, or if you shoot them. This is awesome for creating deadly traps whereby you prime an area, then bait your target into quite the cheeky situation. Where the alpha is concerned, all 3 dynamite options are available, which honestly surprised me. In fact, there's 4 different TNT selections: bundle, proximity, remote, and a single stick. Bundles and sticks share ammo, with sticks using 1 ammo and the bundle using 7. The proximity detonator has a really cute timer on it, despite the fact they're not timed, and still blow up if a target steps too close to them. Alt fire drops them at your feet, and primary fire just throws a lit bundle, which is still drawn from the prox ammo pool. Remotes also only flop at your feet with alt fire, so you can't fling them around. And the primary fire uses the same beeper as the full game to blow up your placed bombs. Pretty cool. Ever since watching Arachnophobia as a kid, using a spray can as a flamethrower seemed such a bitchin' idea for controlling the local spider population. That's hardly surprising considering I live in Australia. Huntsman, anyone? Blood's aerosol attack is really fun, and it's quite effective against spiders, not surprising, hellhands, rats, zombies, and of course bloated butchers. I feel like it's the most effective weapon to use on butchers, short of a few handfuls of dynamite or a napalm shot. Give them a few quick sprays. Between 10 and 20 ammo should do it. Careful though, the flames tumble out really fast. The thing you need to remember is monsters aren't necessarily going to burn down straight away, and the fire needs time to work its magic. Just be patient after applying your liberal squirts, give it a moment, and even the meanest chunky boy will be thrashing around in agony. The primary fire is a straightforward flamethrower. It doesn't have much range, which puts it in the dangerously thrilling camp. Get up close to spray and then jump back, or even leave the room. Yes, blood calls for oodles of patience and brains, but you also need to sack up and leap into the fray every now and then. The secondary attack lights the entire spray can on fire. Like lit TNT, you can hold onto it for about 4 seconds before it erupts in your hands. This will likely result in a very crispy death, so I would recommend you fling the can at a group of undead as quickly as possible. Once thrown, it will explode on contact. So use your dynamite tossing skills, take aim well, and don't miss, because at 48 ammo per throw, they ain't cheap. Unlike dynamite, spray can cocktails don't seem to have any concussive damage applied to them, as monsters won't be thrust around or exploded when hit with the flaming cylinder. This doesn't make the weapon in any way safe, so stay back when chucking them around. With a maximum ammo of 288, you can cleanly throw 6 can cocktails without any leftover juice. Bear this in mind if you feel like flaming up the joint but don't want to go to town with the primary fire. In the alpha, the spray can has much darker sprites, but is pretty much the same, besides sitting in the number 2 weapon slot. The alt fire does a very similar flamethrower attack to the primary fire, but Caleb shakes his hands around. Very nice, but it doesn't seem to alter the attack at all. He can, however, walk forward into his own flame cloud, and will take damage, which thankfully is not the case in the full game as far as I'm aware. Looking at the sluggish flames in the alpha, you can really appreciate the speed of the squirt applied in the complete version. A fun weapon, a very tactical weapon, and I love it. It fits in well with the rest of the arsenal, and sits nicely with all the other anachronisms. The old high-powered heavy repeating weapon. I always love these in games of this period. Doom's Plasma, Duke's Devastator, Quake's Super Nail Gun, and Shadow Warrior's Demon Head. The dark science behind the Tesla cannon though, that's really up my street. This number 8 weapon slams out jarring blue bolts of electricity 5 at a time with each slap of the primary fire. It runs on slender batteries, Tesla charges, which aren't super common but are always great to come across because this weapon is the bee's tits. The projectiles will stun enemies, showing their skeleton through their black flesh as if they've been x-rayed. This bit of cartoony deliciousness is so fun. Looney Tunes meets horror, which is to say, peak Evil Dead. This weapon's good on most enemies except for phantasms and zealots. Phantasms phase too quickly for it to be effective, and zealots are immune, what with shooting out their own shocks. It's extremely powerful against hellhounds, flesh gargoyles, and the bosses, and their mini-boss counterparts. As these beasties can be tricky to take out otherwise, save ammo for these guys especially. Strangely, the electrical attack doesn't damage the player when fired in water, like the LG in Quake, but it's probably for the best. When juiced up with guns akimbo, this weapon is unstoppable, and even a full loadout of charges will disappear as quick as blinking. With the Plasma Pack expansion, the Tesla acquired an alt fire whereby it charges up and lets loose a massive electrical blast which can take down stone gargoyles in no time. Which is great, because as the game progresses, these giant flappy bastards become distressingly common. This alt fire attack consumes 35 ammo with each use, so make 'em count. This attack is also swell for cutting down a pack of hounds. One central alt blast followed by a few extra primary blasts is my recommendation. However, be careful when you use the alt fire, as the charged projectile has a wide area of effect, and you can easily hurt yourself if you get too close to its shocking aura. It's awesome if you unleash it in an area packed with destructible objects, as everything will go flying. There is no Tesla cannon in the Blood Alpha. Instead, there exists the spear gun, which looks almost identical. It fires out hooked spears, which don't seem to do much at all, but the concept is really cool, and I find it pairs really nicely with the nautical theming of the flare gun. If this weapon got an excessive amount of polish, I can imagine it somehow pinning enemies to walls like Painkiller's State Gun, as well as having an alt fire like Bioshock 2's spear gun, spewing out electrified tripwires, or explosive sticky fireworks like dynamite crossed with a flare. But I guess that would have reduced the usefulness of the flare gun itself. I'm so glad the spear gun sprites were kept but altered to be the zappy boy it is today. There are plenty of games where you ignore the special weapons because they suck. There is not one weapon in Blood that can be said about. Now, I'm not saying Nick's a bit off with this comment when considering the Life Leech, but I've never enjoyed using its primary fire. I've always found its cascade of magic balls truly underwhelming, and severely lacking in damage for such a badass looking weapon. Sitting in slot 9 and running on blue trapped souls, its sprites are easily some of the best in the game. A decrepit rotting skull on a stick with eye sockets that light up when it fires. What's not to like? It looks like it should do something truly demonic. But even a full salvo of balls has trouble killing a single cultist. Its attack can result in a tasty fiery death, but there's such a build-up to this that it doesn't seem worth it when there are far more exciting options available. Keeping all this in mind, the staff will also eat through your health if you run out of trapped soul ammo. So not only is it a bit crap, but it will kill you if you use it too aggressively in an attempt to make it useful. Each use will gobble up 14 soul ammo, which when depleted will be taken out of your hide at the same cost. Prior to version 1.10, as already mentioned, the Life Leech would suck HP out of enemies and give it to you. The weapon does spirit damage, so if you're well stocked on spirit armor, you can mitigate its sucky to a certain degree, but it's a lot of effort to go to for a disappointing fireball barrage. However, the alt fire kicks serious anus. When triggered, Caleb will drop the staff and it will turn into a turret, which can be super useful if you set it in a room full of bastards. It'll spit out a steady stream of blue fireballs like the sort stone gargoyles shoot from their eyes. As spirit damage is being served up, this attack will trigger the cool death states for zombies and butchers, which also happens when they're killed with the Voodoo Doll. You can shunt the staff along the ground if you poke it or shoot it. The Shotty's alt fire will send it the furthest, but be careful not to break it. This means that you can set it outside a room and push it in, taking the bad guys by surprise. If the staff is still standing after the metaphorical smoke has cleared, you can pick it back up by simply pressing E. If you've no ammo and you drop the staff, it'll steal a portion of life away from you. This seems to hover somewhere between 20 and 30 HP. When you pick the staff back up, you'll have 25 ammo put back into your soul piggy bank. In fresh supply, you can use the staff whenever you wish, regardless of ammo or health. But in DOS, it seems you need at least 21 HP for it to be dropped. It needs to take about 20 from you, and you need some health left over. So if you're under this amount, the staff will just fire off its primary attack, which will likely end up killing you anyway. So For me, this weapon boils down to being a glorified inventory item, like a hollow juke that does respectable damage to targets. I'd like to think there's some way to effectively use the primary attack, but I'm yet to discover what it is. And considering its life-stealing properties and how awesome the other weapons are, to me, it'll remain a pop-up turret I'll sometimes whip out when I feel like a bit of extra sneaky fun. How would I improve it? I understand the removal of its vampiric attack, and I would keep the player ouchy, but I would make the attack incredibly powerful. I'd also kick the trap soul ammo to the curb and only have it use your health to balance out its devastating attack. You know, want to send out terrifying blasts of fire from a cursed staff? The price is taken from your own flesh. Very dank, very dark, very blood. This weapon doesn't have a counterpart in the alpha, or not one that I could find, so Voodoo time. Oh man, I love this final weapon. Sitting in slot 0, this groovy little doohickey looks like it would be a disposable novelty weapon, but no. It is so damn useful and powerful when used in the right situations. Constructed from sacking and bones, its sprites are so fun. When fired, Caleb plunges a needle into the doll, making it jerk in his hands. The physicality of the animation is bloody marvelous. You can feel each stab, especially when you miss your target and Caleb shanks himself instead, taking damage. The primary fire is a heavy hit scan jab, meaning you can snipe beastly cultists from across rooms and ravines with ease. So long as they remain in your crosshairs, you can keep jabbing away, making them leap and yip in agony as if they've been shot. The prickly nature of the jab sound is perfect. It really gives the impression of material being stabbed. This primary attack ignores armor, and it's particularly juicy when used on hit scanners who think they're hot shit, gargoyles who are zooming in for a scratch, and it will make zombies melt and butchers split in half. But it's exceptional when used on stone gargoyles. Crouch and stab away, and Big Flappy will curl up before you know it. The secondary attack makes Caleb wave his hand over the doll as he casts a spell. This will cause extreme damage to your central target, as well as doing a heavy slap to those surrounding them. Again, this is useful when directed towards Chio's siblings, but bear in mind that it will gobble up all the magic in the doll, so use it with care. The doll has its own ammo pool, so you need to pick up more dolls to refill your voodoo tanks. In the alpha, the doll stabbing seems to work how you'd expect, but the alt fire apparently causes enemies to infight. Would have been a handy tool to have in the full game arsenal. This alpha weapon, sitting tucked away in slot 0, shows off what the once planned beast mode would have looked like. This mode would apparently have been activated once Caleb had dished out or received a lot of damage, morphing into a chonky werewolf-looking monster. I'm guessing it would have been heavily melee focused, what with these big slashy claws on display. In the alpha, there are no attack definitions in place, so primary fire does no damage, even when grabbing at monsters. And the alt fire doesn't even change its animation. This whole concept was recycled for the priest-beast monsters found in the map Beauty and the Beast in the post-mortem episode. They're damn tanky, but are pretty fun bosses to tackle. This weapon has, of course, been sourced up by people in mods to some pretty cool results. Here's a video of one what I found lurking on the Blood Wiki. Very interesting. And that's my understanding of Blood's wickedly twisted and incredibly fun weapons. What's your favorite weapon? Why is that? Would you change anything about them? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's time to play some, Blood 2.
I want Jojo. I want Jojo. Jojo. Jojo.